I want to end tonight's broadcast, though, on a positive note. You think I really like being negative? Do you think I actually thrive off of talking smack, no matter how well founded, about the gaming industry that I love so dearly, the art form that I am in part participating on a, albeit an amateur level myself? No, I don't. I never wanted to. I would have never dreamed of talking this way. But I want to highlight an article that I think is a positivity, especially in the face of Miss Anita Sarkeesian's talks, or talks, I should say. I would say more her opinions, considering the fact that I've already talked at depth about how skin deep some of Miss Anita's research actually was, because she only cares about what serves her purpose. That's not to say that the conversation about women's representation and sexism in the gaming industry is not a discussion that we should have. That's not even why I'm upset with Miss Anita. I'm upset that she's not a factual person. I'm upset that she's disingenuous. I'm upset that she wants a open and honest discussion about this topic, and yet she's talked about things we already know without adding anything new that we could have gotten for free on any feminist blog, reputable or otherwise. And B, she's not allowed comments, so people cannot have that discussion. And as said, misogynistic and threatening comments are not an excuse. She has money that is not going into the production values of her videos that she could use for a moderator. Or the fact that I deal with probably at times as bad a comments as some of the stuff she's been subjected to, and I still allow people to have an open and honest discussion. Even if they're not interested in honesty, I'm not going to be censoring people unless they prove that they're absolutely all they want to do is troll Poe or spew hatred without wanting to actually have a discussion. But I give them the chance to prove themselves. I'm sorry. This is a discussion that's worth having, but she's not the one to have it. And this tends to ignore so many things about the industry that she just, for reasons that I've already outlined, isn't interested in discussing. She doesn't care about, because she does not care about equality for women or real sexism for women in gaming and gaming images here. But let's take that new Tomb Raider game, the one that the feminist has said, that one feminist blog that I'd linked you to in my Feminist Frequency video talking about her tropes versus women's video there, where she was talking about even when the trope is flipped, it's still problematic. And I'm not going to argue that the damsel in distress isn't on some levels lazy writing. Yeah, that can absolutely be a useful thing to say, because I do think that writers these days could do better. That doesn't mean I'm going to begrudge them, though, if a rather engaging story that I'm in does the damsel in distress. And as many other people have talked about, I don't think she understands all of the roles that are involved in that particular trope. She's just seeing it for whatever sexist means that she wants to see it at, and doesn't want to acknowledge the times when it might actually be something pure and actually believable to the experience. I mean, heck, what about the original Resident Evil, where you could pick Jill and you could actually rescue Chris? Oh, but no, we can't do that, because you can also pick Chris and save Jill at the end. So the point, if you don't get the point by now that there is no winning with somebody of her caliber, of her nature, then I think you understand why even her claim for an open discussion about these tropes and how hurtful they can be in gaming, especially to women, isn't true. That's not that is not what her actual goal is if you watch her video. There's this article on Destructoid by a woman by the name of Taylor Stein. that says Lara Croft is more than a survivor, talking about the brand new Tomb Raider game. It says more like epic hero. Now the categories she talks about is 1. Survivor is too passive of a word to describe Lara's feats. 2. She doesn't just survive the ordeal, she charges it head on and shoots it in the face. And 3, Lara Croft is a survivor, but she is also a savior, a warrior, a leader, and a hero. So let me get into parts of this article, because unfortunately with my little mini rant at the beginning, I'm not going to have as much time as I would like for this. But at the same time, I'd rather you read it. I'd rather you digest what she has to say about Lara Croft in this article. For the past 48 hours, I've been completely enthralled in the world of Tomb Raider. Explosions, gunfights, stealthy takedowns, weapon upgrading, and shooting defenseless bunnies has characterized my adventure, one that has been a complete roller coaster ride from beginning to end. With cutscenes as dramatic as any action movie, epic battles against religious crazies, and sprawling environments ripe for exploring, I could barely tear myself away from Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix's masterpiece. Such enthusiasm comes at a cost, however. Completing the game far too quickly is the price I pay. I just recently beat Tomb Raider's main story, and while it was one crazy ride that I thoroughly enjoyed, I was a bit troubled by the concluding sentiments. Players are left with the simple phrase, "A survivor is born." Upon reading those words, I became upset. After all, Lara Croft has been through all that she has accomplished in order to save her friends and escape the ill-fated island. The label that she is granted is survivor. In my mind, Lara's exploits present her in a different light, as a hero. Survivor is too passive of a word to describe Lara's feats. The Tomb Raider reboot serves as a unique purpose, not to further the image of a gaming icon, but to explore the origins of how she became a legend. A theme is carried throughout the narrative as a transition from innocence to maturity. Naivety fades in the midst of hardship, and she is forced to bear the burden of life and death proportions. But let me skip down to the next one. She doesn't just survive the ordeal, she charges it head on and shoots it in the face. Channeling the angst from the journey, Lara evolves into a true fighter. Any who crosses her path are incapacitated without a second thought. Despite what seems like a constant flow of hindrances, challenges, and confrontations, she tackles each trial and thwarts almost certain death time and time again. Lara Croft has always exemplified the badass category, but she also owns it. Ferocity becomes second nature in a landscape riddled with danger in the form of wild animals, samurai warriors, and unpredictable terrain. But finally, I want to cover her last caveat here, which is Lara Croft is a survivor, but she's also a savior, a warrior, a leader, and a hero. Tomb Raider serves as an origin story, but has never been a damsel in distress. You hear that, Anita? Stays alive, but not the gift of coincidence or happenstance. Lady Luck was undoubtedly on her side, but Lara continues to proactively fight throughout the entire ordeal. Perhaps this is a connotative dilemma spurred by personal meanings associated with the word. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the rest of the article, but I am going to kind of leave you with a couple points to ponder here. One is going to be that what will come as far as Anita Sarkeesian's rebuttal, if she decides to make one, and frankly I'd be surprised that if she did, although if she did, I'd be surprised if she was even partly accurate. Because like this author, she's going to say that, sure, Lara's like this, but the developer still dropped the ball by saying a survivor was born at the end. Boo-hoo. How does that change the experience, considering how that ending made this author feel and how disappointed she was at the message, but not at what actually was presented, not at the actual content of the game, because it's almost as if the developer underestimated the power of its own message and kind of nerfed it towards the end. And I guess you can say on some levels that's a valid criticism. It still doesn't make her a trope. The other one she's going to make is probably about the death scenes, probably about how bloodied and bashed up and hurt Laura is, and she's going to try to move the goalpost to say, oh, you're a man and you like the new Tomb Raider update or reboot? Oh, so I suppose you take some sort of perverse pleasure in seeing Laura in such pain, don't you, you misogynistic, power-hungry pig, you? Which I'm sure is something she would work up as a rebuttal. Not that I'm saying she would, I'm just saying I've heard people say this about games and media that were even less than that. And no, I'm sorry, it doesn't. Angry Joe, in fact, addressed this on some level, though I'm sure he didn't realize he was addressing this in a timely fashion, by saying that you care about Laura. You feel her pain. You go through the ordeal with her, but more importantly, those rather horrendous death scenes aren't about brutalizing women, though I'm sure she'll say it is. Eat me, by the way. But about trying to keep her from being brutalized. Everything's about surviving, but everything's about getting stronger, about taking on these challenges, about taking the bull by the horns, even if the bull has broken a rib or two. And if this were a guy, do you think we would be having the same exact conversation? Of course we wouldn't, because guys are brutalized all the time in games, but oh, we're not supposed to care about that. Only the women, the poor, unfortunate women. And again, there is a conversation to be had about sexism and betrayals in gaming. There is not, however, conversation to be had that this is somehow rewiring young men's brains and forcing them into the idea that that women are objects, that women are less than men. There's environmental factors, there's upbringing, is their dad a douchebag? Is their mom maybe a douchebag? There's so many other factors that go into why somebody might feel that way, including gender roles, societal expectations, bros before hoes, and so on and so forth, that are actually have way more to do with the way that a young man is going to grow up and the way that a young man is going to treat a woman than video gaming, which I think is the ultimate irony here of Miss Anita's series. She's focusing only on video games, but not magazines, not movies, not books, not music, not any of this. Video games. Why? Heck if I know, because the connections she's trying to make that these video games and these tropes somehow make men or tailor men into a sort of mentality is ludicrous at best and ridiculous at worst. It's disingenuous, just as her whole series is, but at the very end of the day, it means that if she's not trying to have the actual meaningful talk about feminism and gaming, a talk that, again, I support, then her entire series is absolutely a waste of time, and even more so, a waste of your money. Just as that first episode was an absolute waste of everybody's time and money, because as the feminist blogger that I mentioned in my videos pointed out, she told us everything we knew and didn't go into the places she could have gone into and delved into the topics that she really should have delved into. Meaning that she's a giant disappointment even to a lot of feminists out there. Although, of course, there are still her supporters. I'm sure my video, which I think at last look had about 14 comments, is probably flaming me for being a flaming misogynist. And I say bring it, but try to prove it rather than just simply stating it as if labeling that stamp on my forehead means anything anymore. You've overused the term so much, it's losing its meaning, girls.